Hi, it's Alexis Hasselberger, time management and productivity coach. Let me ask you this. Do you love reading? And do you find it hard to make time for reading? Right? This has been a problem for me as well over the years. I think I used to be a person who just loved. I mean, I still love reading, but I used to just voraciously consume books. Like when I was a kid, I always had a stack on my bedside table of at least 10 books. I was always kind of in the middle of half of them. I read all the time. And then in 2009, I had my first kid. And while I still loved reading, I was finding that I just wasn't able to make the time for reading that I used to before because, I was a full-time working parent, and then I would come home and I had the second shift of having a baby at home, right? And I just wasn't finding that I had the time. And then in 2013, I had two kids at this point. They were 2 and 4. And I realized that I could not even remember the last time I read a book that wasn't about parenting, right? That wasn't about how to put your kid to sleep or, how to get them to eat or whatever, all of these things. It was not pleasure reading, not at all. And I realized I did not know the last time that I had read a book for pleasure. And I wanted to change that. And so I thought, what I'll just do? I'll start by tracking because Peter Drucker says what gets measured gets managed. And I bet I can apply this to reading. And so I did. I started a spreadsheet and I started just tracking what I was reading. And I found that this gave me a weird motivation to want to keep going. And so I was able to really bring a lot more books in. I had gone from past few years, maybe only reading like a couple of books a year for pleasure, to that year in 2013, I read 35 books. And I was pretty impressed with myself. I was still a full-time working parent. And I had a lot of responsibilities, and yet I had read 35 books. And so I was pretty proud of myself. And I carried on for the next several years. I just looked at my spreadsheet and I averaged, about 23 books a year over the next several years. And then in 2021, I read 75 books. And this year, it's let's see, it's end of October when I am recording this right now. I've read 59 books already this year, right? So much more than my previous averages. So what happened, right? How did I do that? Did I somehow stumble upon a wormhole that allowed me more time, more access to more time? I went back in time? No. Did I somehow have fewer obligations? No. What did happen was that I embraced audiobooks, right? Now, I had always been a person that considered myself like a paper person. Like I liked paper books. I loved going to the library. I really liked having that weight, that heft in my hand when I was reading. And what happened was COVID. And so in 2020, I stopped going to the library in person, and I just got out my dusty old Kindle that I really had not been using. It was a hand-me-down from someone else. And I said, well, I'm going to try ebooks, right? Because what else am I going to do? I'm at home. I have, I've made some time to read. And so I'm going to use ebooks. And then that was fine. And once I got myself over this hump that a book has to be this physical paper thing, then I opened my eyes up to audiobooks. I don't know why it took me so long, but it did. Part of the reason I think it took me so long, honestly, was because I'd had this thought in my mind, like, is audiobooks, is that cheating, right? Is that really reading? And I'm kind of ashamed that I had that thought because further research shows me that thought is pretty darn ableist, right? To think that the only way that we can read is by visually reading a paper book like that, right? It's not true, and it's pretty ableist. So I thought it, I'm sharing it. Man, the research shows that whether we're listening to a book or whether we're reading a book or whether we're even reading and listening at the same time, our reading comprehension and our recall are both the same, right? So what that shows us is that one of them is not better than the other, right? There's no shame in audiobooks. Audiobooks are just as much legitimately books as paper books. They're just another format, right? So now that we've kind of established audiobooks, they're great. There's no shame in them. I want to share with you why introducing audiobooks into my reading regimen actually just skyrocketed the number of books that I was reading, right? And I think it is two things. So the first thing is that when you are reading audiobooks, you start to read faster, because what happens is that at the beginning, you're reading it on, 1x speed, and that's fine and normal. And then after a while, after your brain and body kind of habituate to listening, that starts to feel slow. And so you start ratcheting up the speed a little bit. And at this point, I listen to most books between maybe 1.5 and 2x, depending on how slow or fast the narrator reads. And when I go back to 1x and try to listen at that slow speed, Everyone's just sounds drunk to me. It just sounds so slow. It's unbearable, right? So you kind of ratchet up the speed over time with which you can read books. The other thing that you're doing when you're using audiobooks is that you have opened up more time in your day for books because you can read audiobooks while you're doing other things. So you can read an audiobook while you're exercising. You can listen to an audiobook while you're doing the dishes. You can listen to an audiobook while you were driving your kids all over town. You can listen to an audiobook while you're doing so many other things. And so what happens is that now you have more time to devote to reading because you can double duty it while you're doing something else. And while you're doing that, you're actually making the other activity much more enjoyable. I have to say, I really do not dread my chores, my household chores anymore, now that I listen to audiobooks, because it's just a thing I'm doing with my hands while I'm enjoying the book that I'm reading and while I'm kind of lost in that escapism. So those are the two reasons that I think that really skyrocketed my ability to read much more than I had been before. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying it. I get through, I mean, my to read list is probably 500 books long, but I'm getting through them at such a quicker pace now. Now, if you are interested in audiobooks, you would like to give it a try, there are so many options, but there are two that I'm going to recommend. One of them is an app called Libby, Libby. This is an app that connects to your library card. So you can just download the app, connect it to your library card, and now you can download audiobooks and ebooks for free from the library from the comfort of your own couch. So I love that one. And then also, of course, there's Audible, right? So with Audible, you're paying, but you don't have to wait for a book to become available at the library. They're all available right there. So it's kind of the convenience factor of knowing that you don't have to wait, but you are paying a little bit more for that. Me, I'm a frugal person. I love using the app Libby. I just kind of queue up a number of books that I want to read, and then I just read whatever comes first. So if you are thinking about audiobooks, let me know which method you think you might use. And also, I'm always looking for more great books to read because I have more time to read now since I'm doing it while I'm doing other things. So if you have a great recommendation for a book, drop it in the comments. I read everything, fiction, nonfiction. Nothing is, nothing is off of the table. So share with me your book recommendations. I would love to add them to my to listen list. Now, if you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe. I will be in your feeds every week.
Like she said, make sure to subscribe to the channel. As you can see, only 17.3% of the people that watch our videos are actually subscribed, so it'd be a big help if you subscribe.